Okay, this is a little bit of supplemental information having to do with division of polynomials, and we're trying to find what numbers are factors. There are several ways we can approach this. The first one is by long division. I'm going to use two different attempts as a factor, and I will determine whether or not one or both or neither are factors. Alright, so starting here, I have my x minus 3, and I'm going to be dividing that into this value here, my x cubed plus x squared minus 4x minus 4. The way I'm going to do this is I start with my leading value in my divisor, and I'm going to line that up so that I wind up having whatever I multiply that by, I get my leading term in the dividend. Okay, so here I have an x cubed and I have an x here, so I need to multiply by an x squared. So then my x squared times x is going to get me an x cubed, and my x times negative 3 is going to get me negative 3x. And now I'm going to remind folks we're subtracting here, so I'm going to just go ahead and change my signs. I do that kind of as my last step before I actually do the subtraction. So this goes to 0, which is exactly what we wanted. Here I have a 4x squared. Oops, drop my name. 4x squared. And then I'm going to bring this one down, so I have a minus 4x. And so I'm going to say that I have a positive 4x here. Positive 4x. So I have my 4x times x, which is going to give me a 4x squared. And then I'm going to have a 4x times a negative 3. That's going to give me a negative 12x. And again, I'm going to go ahead, change the signs on this because I'm subtracting. So that becomes a negative. This becomes a positive. This goes to 0, which is exactly what we wanted. Here I have a positive 8x. So 8x minus 4, right? That 4 is coming down from here. And now I'm going to say 8x, so I'm going to have an 8 here, and I'm going to go ahead, it's positive 8. So positive 8 times x is going to give me 8x. 8 times negative 3 is going to give me a 24, negative 24. And a reminder, I'm going to go ahead and change my sign here because I'm subtracting. So subtraction there, because that's a double negative, that becomes a positive. And that leaves me with 20 as a remainder. So I know this goes back to probably 3rd or 4th grade, but the fact that we have a remainder is going to be important. In fact, that is how we tell whether or not this is a factor. So x minus 3 is not a factor. All right, let's try this other one. See whether it is a factor. So again, I'm going to start off with the same process. I've got my x cubed. I have an x, so I need to have an x squared here. So that's going to give me an x plus, or x minus 3x squared. And then I'm going to change my signs everywhere because I'm subtracting. So that's a minus. That double negative becomes a plus. This is going to give me a 4x squared. And I'm going to subtract my 4x. So now I need to address the positive 4x. Right, so 4x squared right? That's going to be, this 4x times x is going to be 4x squared. And then I have 4x times 1, so that's going to be a 4x. And then I'm going to change my sign on everything. Oh, that would be, nope, be negative. Hang on a second. So here, I'm going to go back to my it's going to give me 4x squared, so that becomes a negative, and then that's going to become a negative as well. So this goes to 0, which is what we want. Now I have a negative 8x, and then I'm going to bring down this negative 4. And let's see. I'm going to go ahead and plug in a negative 8. So negative 8 times x is going to get me a negative 8x. And the negative 8 times 1 is going to get me a negative 8. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and add on those. Alright, in this case I'm a lot closer, but in this case I wind up with a positive 4, so this is also not going to be a term. This is not a term. So let me go ahead and I'm going to actually pull one up that will be a term, and we'll go from there. I want to actually show one that does solve it. Alright, so let's go ahead and do this one. I have an x minus 2 is one of my terms. I'm going to go ahead and see if this actually winds up being a factor of this. Alright, so I have an x and an x squared. Right, x times x squared is going to get me an x cubed. And then x times negative 2 is going to get me a negative 2x squared. And now again I'm subtracting, so I'm going to change my signs. This goes to 0x cubed. This is going to give me a 3x squared. I'm going to bring down this negative 4x. Right? And here I'm going to go ahead and use a negative, it's positive 3x. So positive 3x times x is going to get me a 3x squared. And then a 3x times a negative 2 is going to get me a negative 6x. And again, I'm subtracting, so I'm going to change my signs. And now I'm going to have a 0x squared, and I'm going to have a 2x, and I'm going to bring down my 4, the negative 4. So here I'm going to have a plus 2. So that's going to give me a 2x, 2 times negative 2 is going to give me a negative 4. I'm going to change my signs because I'm subtracting. And this goes to 0. So this is an actual factor. So a factor of this, our polynomial, is our x minus 2. Now I want to point out at this point I actually have a quadratic, and we know how to address quadratics. I am going to show you another way of approaching this using what's called synthetic division, and we'll start with this and then we'll walk it all the way through, and hopefully that will help us out. So I will be back with this here in just a moment.